Assalamualaikum and a very good day to all of you. My name is Mohamad Sobri bin Suhaili, and today I am going to present to you our group's presentation entitled Survey Research Design. Before I start the presentation, let me introduce the team members. They are Katherine, Livan, Kehing binti Abdullah, and Yong Hua Ying. This presentation has been divided into 8 sections. We plan to have this presentation as brief as possible. It's going to take about 15 minutes, more or less. So if you have any question to ask, you may ask at the end of the presentation. All right, so without further ado, let's start the presentation. All right, first of all, is the survey research design. So survey research design is a procedure in quantitative research in which investigators administers a survey to a sample or to the entire population of people to describe the attitudes, opinions, behaviors, or characteristics of the population. So a survey is carried out to collect data. It's a quantitative number data using questionnaires. It's either emails or using interview, and then there is the data collected is to be analyzed and later on to be interpreted. Next, when do you use survey research? All right, survey research is normally used to assess, to determine the trends. It's also used to look for the respondents' opinions. Also used to look for the belief and the attitudes of the respondents, and also to evaluate a process or a system in schools or in other institutions. All right, so when did this research, survey research started? It has started dated back in 1817 during the International Survey of Education System. And from that moment on, it has developed throughout the years, and nowadays we can see the use of survey research is widely used. All right, what are the types of survey design? The type of this, there are two types of survey design. The first one is a cross-sectional survey design, and the second one is longitudinal survey design. So what the differences between these two? Cross-sectional survey design is conducted to collect insights from a target audience at a particular time interval. And it can either be descriptive or analytical in nature. It's quick and help researchers collect information in a brief time span. The researchers rely on cross-sectional survey research methods in situations where descriptive analysis of a subject is required. So this is a cross-sectional survey design. Longitudinal survey design, on the other hand, involves conducting survey research over a continuum of time, which may be spread across years and decades. The data collected from one time period to another is qualitative or quantitative in nature. The respondents' behavior, preferences, attitudes, and are observed constantly over time to analyze reasons for change in behavior or preferences. Longitudinal survey research is often followed by cross-sectional survey research. So this is basically the differences between longitudinal and cross-sectional survey design. All right, moving on to the key characteristic of survey research. All right, the key characteristic of survey research, first of all, it is the sampling from a population. The sample is taken from a population. We're going to talk more about this later on. Second one is collecting data through questionnaires or interviews. The data is collected through questionnaires or interview. The third one is designing instrument for data collection, and then obtaining a high response rate. So using survey research, a researcher will probably have a high response rate. All right, so this is, when we talk about population, this is the detailed explanation about the population. The population is a group of individuals having one characteristic that distinguishes them from other groups. The target population or sampling frame is the actual list of sampling units from which the sample is selected. And the sample is a group of participants in a study selected from the target population from which the researchers generalizes to the target population. So the population is very general and it goes down to a very specific group of people as the sample. All right, so reducing error in survey research. So when talking about sampling, sometimes there are error for those who are answering the questions. So in order to reduce this error, so there are several steps that we can take. For example, in order to reduce the coverage error, you need to have a good sampling frame. In order to reduce sampling error, you need to have a larger population as possible. And to reduce measurement error, you need to use a good instrument with clear and ambiguous questions. And then if you try to reduce the non-response error, so we need to use a rigorous administration procedures to achieve as large return rate as possible. All right. Next is constructing survey questionnaires. All right, so when we are constructing the questionnaires, there are two types of questionnaires. One is questionnaire in the form of form questionnaire. Another questionnaire is the interview survey. All right. So a form questionnaire in a survey designed that participants in a study complete and return to the researchers. I think every one of us have experienced this. The participant chooses answers to question and supplies basic information or demographic information, basic personal or demographic information, yes. The interview survey, on the other hand, is where the researchers record answers supplied by the participant in the study. Instead of the participant themselves record the answer in the questionnaire, interview survey is where the interviewer will interview the respondent and the interviewer themselves will record the answer. The researcher asks a question from an interview guide, listen for answers or observers' behavior, and records responses on the survey. All right, survey interviews. All right, as for quantitative survey interviews, the investigator uses a structured or semi-structured interview consisting of mostly close-ended questions, provides response options to interviewees, and records their responses. So for quantitative, the question is more structured. The question is the answer is provided, the answer option is provided for the respondent to answer, as compared to qualitative, where the interviewer asks open-ended questions without response options and listen to and records the comments of the interviewee. All right. So this is the form of data collection based on who completes or records the data. So if you look at the participant over here, so this one is basically based on a questionnaire, okay, mail questionnaire or electronic questionnaire, and this is more to interview survey, where researcher will record the data. Next, we're going to look at the aspect of survey instrument design. So the instrument that we design need to meet this aspect. It could be personal, it must be personal or attitudinal, behavioral, sensitive, scalable, and open-ended. All right, so somehow, sometimes when we develop the instrument, we tend to have problem in the question themselves, okay? In the construction of the questions, there might be some problem in it. For example, the question is unclear, there are multiple questions, unvalid response options. So these are the list of the problems that normally happen as we construct the questionnaire. So therefore, in order to avoid the problem to occur, so make sure that we fit the questions to answers, include suitable response options, and do not overlap the either question or answers. All right, once we have developed our questionnaire, our instrument, before we distribute it to the samples or to the respondents, we need to test our instrument. We call it as the pilot testing. Right, so the pilot testing is a test of a small number of individuals in the sample, ask for written feedback on the questions. So we ask those who are answering our questionnaire on their feedback about the instrument. Revise the survey based on the written comments and exclude the pilot participants from the final sample for the studies. All right. Next, we're going to talk about the response rate. Okay, how long do we need to allow the respondent to answer the questions? So we mail out original questionnaire, first of all. Second of all, we follow up it in 2 weeks with a second mailing of questionnaire to those who have not responded, or we call them as non-respondents. Third one, we follow up again in 2 weeks with a postcard to non-respondents, reminding them to complete the questionnaire. All right, so we have a period of 6 weeks, 2 weeks after we have after the first mailing, and then another 2 weeks, the second mailings, and then we allow another 2 weeks after the postcard mailing. All right. So when we get the response from the interviewer, from the respondents, we might get the response bias. Okay, so response bias is when the respondents do not accurately reflect the views of the samples and the populations. So under response bias, there's a technique called wave analysis. Wave analysis is a procedure to check for response bias. In order to detect response bias, so wave analysis is carried out in indicating the response bias. All right, next we're going to talk about the construct and analyze a mail questionnaire. So when we want to send questionnaire in the form of email or in the form of electronic to the respondents, make sure that we cover the 3 things. First of all, a cover letter to invite participants to complete the questionnaire. Second one is the form and construction of the questionnaire. And third one is the statistical procedures typically used to analyze data from a mail questionnaire. All right. So this, we're going to look at VanHorn-Grassmeyer as sample by VanHorn-Grassmeyer in 1998, where he had carried out research and he has been using survey design in order to collect the data. So he included 5 elements, 5 items, which are the cover letter, the close-ended question asking participants about their background. The third one is close-ended questions addressing practices or behaviors and attitudes. The fourth one is open-ended question permitting respondents to add their perceptions. Number 5, closing instructions thanking the participants for taking part in the study. So when we send cover letter to the respondents, make sure that we include these 5 major elements in writing the cover letter. We need to tailor our cover letter according to this format. The cover letter need to possess these 5 elements, which are the importance of the participants, the purpose of the study, the assurances of confidentiality, the sponsorship, and the completion time and returns. When do they need to finish the questionnaire, and how do they return the questionnaire? That one is about mail questionnaire. Now we're going to talk about interview survey. Okay, the interviewer should maintain a neutral stance during the interview. Cannot be biased. Train the interviewers prior to the interview. Take good notes of responses or use a tape recorder. For telephone interviews, develop a telephone interview guide prior to the interview. All right. There might be a potential ethical issues in survey research. So if this might happen, so make sure that we do not overstate the benefits of participating and deliver on what benefits are guaranteed. Second of all, the researchers should not put interviewers at risk for their safety. And last but not least, the respondents' personal information need to be kept safe as well. All right, so once we have decided to use survey research in our studies, so make sure that we conduct these 8 steps. First one is decide if a survey is the best design to use, identify the research questions or the hypothesis, identify the population, the sampling frame and the sample, determine the survey design and data collection procedures, develop or locate an instrument, administer the instrument, analyze the data to address the research questions or hypothesis, and last but not least, write the report. All right. So once we have completed all, then next, the last section is we need to evaluate our research. Okay? Evaluate our survey research. So whether the research consists of interviews or mail questionnaires, survey studies need to meet high standards of quality. So if you plan to conduct a survey, we need to design and write a method section in our study that conveys the detailed survey research procedures. So these are the checklists that we can follow in order to evaluate our survey research. Okay, you can have these slides and you can go through the slides. To understand better, you can also refer to Cresswell Book. Should you have any questions, you may ask us. Thank you for your cooperation and thank you for listening to this presentation. It's actually 2:30 in the morning. Thank you very much.